All right, welcome everyone. Today's webinar is Comparing Online Safety Training Solutions. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be talking about how you can find the best solution for your company's safety training needs. We're going to go for about 45 minutes today with 10-15 minutes at the end for questions. So as questions come up for you while we're going through this, put them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. We're going to be following up in a day or so with a recording of this webinar, as well as a useful checklist that you can use while you're doing your own evaluations of various online safety training solutions, and also a list of various blog posts that we've written about this material in the past that you should find pretty useful. So be on the lookout for that. We'll also have a really short survey at the end of this webinar today. If you could help us out by participating in that, that'd give us some useful feedback on how well we did here today. So we are Convergence Training. If you're unfamiliar with us, we make online safety and compliance training videos, and we develop a learning management system, training management system as well. So if you want to learn more about us, you can go to our website or email us. I'm JP Dull, the marketing manager here, and today we are joined by Jeff Dalto, our senior learning and development specialist. Jeff's been an instructional designer for 20 years now. He's worked in safety training for 10 years. He's written pretty much everything on the Convergence Training blog, so you might be familiar with him from that. He also writes a regular column in the ASSE Professional Safety magazine on safety training, and has been picked to help write the upcoming ASSE standard on virtual safety training as well. So he's got a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, and he's going to be taking us through the webinar. So I'm going to turn it over to him right now.
Okay, hello. Thank you, JP. Hello, everybody out there, and thank you for taking a little time out of your day and listening in on the webinar. Hopefully we've got some good info for you. As JP mentioned, we're going to be talking about comparing online safety training solutions. Our goal is to help you evaluate these different solutions to find the one that's right for your company. There's no one system that's right for every company, so hopefully you can we'll help you focus in. We're going to do that in 4 different sections. What is online safety training, which may not be quite as obvious as it might seem. Why choose online safety training? I'm guessing if you're here in this webinar, it's because you have some interest and some ideas of your own, but we'll give you some other ideas also. Evaluating online safety training solutions, arguably kind of the meat of what we're getting at here. And we're going to break that down into 3 smaller parts for you. The first will be evaluating courses. The second will be evaluating the training management systems. And then the third is evaluating the safety training provider you might be working with. And then we'll give you a few tips for beginning your search. Before we start, our goals are to share our experience. We've been doing this for 15 years or so, including working with a lot of companies in safety training. And over those 15 years, we've had our shares of successes. We've also made our mistakes and learned our lessons from those. And things have changed over time as well. So we want to share some of that experience with you. We want to help those first-time buyers out there and complete newbies or novices who really just don't know the basic ideas of the field or the terms that are used to just get a better kind of fundamental 101 level understanding of what's out there and what people are talking about when they're saying certain things. And we also want to help a group of potential customers who come to us a lot. And these are people who already bought a system, a training management system or a safety training management system, and then had buyer's remorse and are looking for a system 2. So to step back to you first-time buyers, we want to help you avoid this trap, give you some things to think about and make some plans in advance so that you don't become a second-time buyer. And for those second-time buyers, well, given your scenario, we want to help you out with that as well. So we're going to start in just a second. I've got a little good news, bad news, good news for you. The good news is I'm going to give you a lot of information in this hour, and it should be helpful, and it should help you start your process. The bad news is I can't tell you everything about online safety training, and you won't remember everything I say in the next 45 minutes. But the corresponding good news, as JP has mentioned, we're going to send you a lot of information in a day or two, a recorded version of this webinar, the PowerPoint we're using, links to a blog post that compile everything we're talking about here, including a free, I think, 50-page online safety training buyer's guide. So sit down, take some light notes. Don't feel like you have to scribble down everything I say. We'll get a bunch of related information to you later in the mail. And if you go to the Convergence training blog right now and just scroll down a few posts, you'll see the post about this webinar that has a lot of that information, and we'll be adding more to it in the next few days. All right, so let's get going. All right, there we go. So first, section 1, what is online safety training? Simplest definition, it's safety training taken on a computer. What we really want to call out to you is that training taken on a computer these days is usually training taken through a web-based solution. Your users are going to log in and access the training on a web browser like Internet Explorer, Firefox, Safari, and so on. Now that might actually be on the internet, or what people call the World Wide Web. It could also be on your company's own server or network. Some solutions are either or. You can just put it wherever you want it. So you'll have some flexibility with that. Looking further at this idea, this umbrella term of online safety training, we can break it down into two primary components. The first are the courses on safety topics like we're seeing here, HAZCOM, confined space, lockout, tagout, crane safety, and so on. And a little bit later in this presentation, we'll give you tips for evaluating those courses and tell you some important things about those courses. The second side of that coin, if you will, are the safety training management systems that are used to deliver those courses to your employees, and then depending on the system that you're getting, also allow you to do things like make your own assignments, possibly import, create, and update training, give people credit for completing training, generate reports, and more. And maybe something that might be a surprise to you, especially if you're one of the kind of newer people to online safety training, one of those more things that these online safety training management systems can do is provide tools so you can manage your classroom-based safety training and your field-based safety training. So again, we'll give you more tips for evaluating these systems in the future. And what you'll find is you can, from any one provider, you may be able to buy courses, a management system, or both. You might be able to get a management system with courses in it and then add more. So you'll see there's a lot of different options out there in the field. While you're looking at all these different courses and management systems, what you're going to notice that's out there in the market, you're going to notice there's a whole bunch of different ones, and they do different things. The simplest way to look at it is, some are going to do more and some are going to do less. Other ways to look at some of these differences, some are intended just for an individual viewer. Others are intended for an employee base at a specific company, like company XYZ. Others are intended for more than just employees at the company, your extended enterprise. So you're talking about your contractors, your visitors, your vendors, your suppliers, your salespeople, even your potential customers. As we mentioned, some of these could be stored on your computers, your company's own server or network. They could be on the internet. Some are flexible and they go either way. Some are actually hosted on something new called the distributed cloud. Some of them provide a certification to the learner when they've completed training. An example might be something like HAZWOPER, or maybe like OSHA 10, or maybe something like MSHA New Minor, for example. Others really don't. They'll just give you what we call kind of a smaller thing called a completion record. I've completed this course. I get a piece of paper saying I'm done. They'll have different payment options. Some are one-time pay up front. Some are pay-per-view, so you're only paying for a certain number of views, or you literally pay every time you launch a course. And others are subscription-based, so somebody's going to be paying every month or every year or something like that. Some of the solutions are going to have a completely unlimited number of course launches, and others are going to have like a specific number of course launches with a cap, if you will, 500, 5,000, 10,000 launches. And then another difference is a lot of these courses may be available for a longer or shorter period of time, maybe in some cases just maybe a month, maybe others for a year, or essentially indefinite as long as you stay with the company. So again, when you're out there in the marketplace, you're going to see there's a lot of different solutions. These are some of the things you'll see out there. We're going to help you dial in on these as we continue on in the webinar. So before we go much further, we want to say that we provide online safety training solutions, but we don't recommend you go 100% online. Instead, we recommend what learning experts call a blended learning solution. What does that mean? It means you're mixing and matching different kinds of training. So it might be written materials, like it might be your PDF or maybe a PowerPoint you have. It could be a video, could be field-based training, classroom training, could be the online training we're talking about. And so that's what we're recommending. And that's true after the evaluation process. If you decide, I don't want online safety training, we still recommend you go with a blended solution minus an online component. If you decide you do want online safety training, we recommend the same blended learning solution. Learning experts recommend it. ANSI Z490.1 on effective safety training recommends it. And so does our blog. So check that out. The single best source of information I know of statistics and data backing up the effectiveness of blended learning as opposed to just instructor training or just online training or any single kind of training is a book by a woman named Dr. Ruth Colvin Clark. Her book is called Evidence-Based Training Methods, and we pulled out a couple quotes here for you. I highlighted the key points in red. Learning effectiveness does not depend on the delivery medium. So her book and her studies show there's nothing inherent in the kind of training, online or classroom or field-based, that corresponds to greater or lesser learning effectiveness. She goes on to say that blending learning environments are more effective than those that are all of one type or all of another. And as she does in her book time and time again, at one point she quotes the U.S. Department of Education in a study in that found a significant learning advantage to courses using media blends compared to pure classroom or pure online. So again, that's our message to you is if you go online, use it as part of a blended learning solution. We're not suggesting you get rid of classroom-based or anything else. Okay, we've mentioned that we have a bunch of blog articles on our blog that'll help you with this and additional links too. You will get this PowerPoint. You'll see we have embedded related articles at the different sections. So when you get this PowerPoint, you can click this link and check out all these things, including Dr. Ruth Colvin Clark's book and ANSI Z490.1. And now I'm going to move into the next section of our discussion here. Why choose online safety training? Again, you guys probably have your own reason. Maybe you don't need a lot of help with this, but we're going to give you a few ideas. We rounded up some data in the research field out there. And frankly, I think this data makes the point more strongly than we intend to. Remember, we're telling you go with a blended solution. A lot of times this data is saying like online's better. That's not really our intention, but it does give you some things to think about. First of all, if you add online safety training, you're going to see it improves your overall safety training program within that blended learning solution we were talking about. Here's something from the Research Institute of America, and they did studies comparing how much people retained from e-learning, which is same as online, and face-to-face training. And you see e-learning, they retained a lot more. So again, that's not our point. E-learning is better, but it is interesting that at least in some scenarios, e-learning will actually lead to greater retention. Another thing about online safety training is employees like it. And the fundamental reason that they like it, above and beyond anything else, is it lets them complete training on their schedule and not on their manager's schedule. So if you think about a lot of classroom-based safety training, employees get pulled off their work, typically having no regard for their work schedule or when they're busy and when they're not. They're put in a classroom, and they have to sit in the classroom and then return to work, and usually they're going to be behind and they have to struggle to catch up. Online safety training, when you can use that instead of instructor-led training, allows workers to complete the training on their own schedule at slower moments for them. So that's right off the bat, that's a win. It's really a win-win, but it's definitely a win for the employees. Another thing to think about why some employees are going to like this is online training allows for self-guided training, and you can learn at your own pace. Some people go faster, some people go slower, some people will get confused and want to back up. And again, it puts the employee or the learner in the driver's seat. So that's one reason why employees tend to like it. A couple things to kind of back that point up. In general, in terms of providing training online, you're getting additional training information in your employees' hands. And here's a study from the National Research Business Institute that shows that almost a quarter of employees, 25% of employees, it's really 23, I think, leave their jobs due to lack of training and learning opportunities. So if you're getting an online system that's going to allow employees access to more training and more learning, there's a much better chance they're going to stay with you. And I'm sure you all know the cost of losing a valuable, skilled, experienced employee and having to hire somebody, attract their, recruit them, hire them, and train them up again. So if you can avoid that, that's to your benefit. Now, as this graph is showing, all generations rank personal safety as a significant stress factor in the workplace. But if you look over there on the left, the red bar, those are millennials, and they feel even more strongly about this issue, which isn't maybe shocking given that they grew up in the Great Recession and 9/11 and an era of Al-Qaeda and all of these things. But they're going to appreciate, all these workers and especially these millennials are going to appreciate that you're making an investment in online safety training and in safety training. They're going to feel that it's going to help them work more safely at work, and that's going to reduce that significant stress factor. And you may or may not have millennials at your workplace now. I bet you do. I bet it's kind of a sizable portion. But I guarantee you they're coming, and you don't need me to tell you that. So you might as well prepare for this incoming generation. One of the experiences we have when we work with customers, and this is a little story based on a real customer of ours, is they get a little unexpected benefit when they introduce online safety training at the workplace. And what it ends up doing is it increases the overall safety culture and improves employee ownership of safety, above and beyond simply, are people compliant on their safety training requirements. And so I've got a little quote from a woman who works, she's the training manager down in Hawaii, works down in right off of Honolulu, and they make corrugated packaging. And they implemented our online safety training solution. And she said that over time, and here in red, our employees became much more personally and emotionally invested in safety. So her employees went above and beyond simply completing their courses. They became much more active in terms of informing another coworker if he or she was working in an unsafe manner. They saw an uptick in reported near misses and also an uptick in safety observations or safety suggestions. And essentially just it kind of snowballed and went from completing online safety training to creating a better safety culture and having the employees, as I've said, take ownership of safety. And we've heard this from other companies as well that we've worked with, where you're showing an investment in safety that you care, and your employees turn around and meet you halfway or make that same commitment as well. Another thing online safety training can do is it can increase productivity in the workplace. Now let's first talk about it. I'm assuming you people out there listening to me are probably safety training managers. And a lot of the time you might spend with training management right now probably has to do with clerical and logistical tasks, things that tend to take a lot of time and that automated systems can do more effectively. So if you automate some of that, you can use your time more productively, and that really has two components. First of all, you can do other parts of your job that have nothing to do with safety training. Your safety walkthroughs, your JHAs, your safety audits, safety meetings, running your safety and health management system, and so on. The other thing you can do is some of the training you're currently doing with classroom-based training can be done with online. Usually with the same training effectiveness, sometimes even with greater training effectiveness, depending on a scenario. And you can focus on the time that you're currently using for classroom safety training, and use it when it's most effective. When your employees really benefit from being able to talk to you face to face, when they really benefit from a hands-on exercise, when they really benefit from your spontaneous feedback. So that's going to increase productivity for you. Now, from the worker's perspective, the key issue here is they can take training when they're not busy. And as you'll see in some studies I'm about to show you, e-learning tends to be shorter than instructor-led training, which gets them back to work sooner. So both of those things, taking it when they're not busy and getting back to work sooner, are going to increase training worker productivity as well. One study, I think this is from IBM. IBM found that every dollar they invested in online training led to a $30 increase in productivity. And again, this mostly had to do with shorter training and getting people back to work sooner. Another study here, and this is from an organization we recommend you check out after the webinar, Brandon Hall. They have a lot of helpful resources for evaluating training and online training. They found that e-learning is generally shorter than classroom training on the same subject by as much as 60%. So again, and that's without necessarily loss of training effectiveness, but a significantly shorter amount of time spent on that. Another thing that online training does is it can help you reduce your training costs. If you're doing a lot of instructor-led training, I probably don't need to tell you it can be very expensive, especially if you think about it for every session you hold throughout a year or over 5 years. That can include, in some cases, travel expenses, lodging, maybe renting a space, maybe you're getting food and drinks for that, maybe you're hiring third-party training consultants, maybe you're paying your employees overtime. We hear that story a lot from our customers because it's the only time that training can fit into their schedule. And here's a study from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce showing that 85% of instructor-led classroom training is devoted to that kind of wasted space, instructor time, travel, lodging, and so on. So in theory, in some cases, for training need X or safety training need Y, you can use online instead of instructor-led and cut out 85% on every dollar you're spending. Again, whilst getting either the same training effectiveness or in some cases better. Some additional things to think about that are benefits for online safety training. Online safety training is standard safety training with the same consistent standard message to every employee, which frankly is hard to do in instructor-led training. And I've practiced this webinar a few times and I say something different every time. So online training gets rid of that variability and gives you a standard consistent message. It's going to simplify your safety training administration. It'll allow workers to use maybe mobile devices to access safety training information after training out in the field when they really need that information. It's going to allow you to make better safety training records. And as I mentioned, it'll allow you to make better use of your instructor-led safety training time. So again, more articles for you here on the Convergence Training blog. We'll send this PowerPoint to you. You can check them out when you want to in the future. And JP, if you can hear me, before I move on to the next section, I want to see if you had any questions from the audience or if I should move forward.
No questions at the moment.
Okay, apparently I'm being perfect. Thanks, everybody. We're going to move forward then and talk about how to evaluate these different online safety training solutions. And I told you earlier we're going to break this down into 3 components: evaluating the courses, evaluating the training management systems, and evaluating the providers. So let's start by looking at those courses. And we'll see how I do handling this webinar tool. We've got a little, in just this moment, I'm going to put an online survey question for you. Find out about your own expectations and desires. I'm going to ask a question: what features in training courses do you find most important? You'll see it's a little multiple choice thing. Let's see if I do this right. All right, and I think it looks good. Hopefully you see a blue multiple choice question on screen. Go ahead and enter which of these 5 items is the best answer for you. All right, people are starting to vote. I'll give you a few more, little more time here. All right, and we're starting to wrap up voting. Some people are still voting, but what I'm seeing here, I don't know if you guys see the results. I apologize for that. 45%, the biggest answer is accurate safety information. I've got 26% of people who are saying the test or assessment at the end. I've got 22% of people saying sound or proper instructional design. 6% say the ability to pass completion data onto an automated system. And nobody selected I don't know or other. So that's very interesting. I'm going to close this poll. This should take us back. Yep, okay. Success. Okay, I'm going to give you a couple of things to talk about or think about in terms of these courses. And the first thing I want to do is break down this umbrella term online safety training course. And in particular, I want to make a distinction between a video and an e-learning course. In real life, when you're not at work, a good example of this is you go to Netflix, you hit play, and you watch a movie, maybe I don't know, Mad Men or something. You go and maybe at work, you get to watch a video from OSHA or MSHA or maybe the Chemical Safety Board. Again, you see the title, you hit a play button, you watch, and that's it. So that's what a video is. And a lot of times people use that term online safety training to refer to a video. But if you think about a video, what it doesn't have is it has no interaction or interactivity at all. There are no practice questions. There's no feedback to employees who get the question wrong. There's no test at the end. And so a video can be great. And I'm a big fan, for example, of the videos of the Chemical Safety Board. But they're not a complete learning experience, and that's the difference between a video and an e-learning course. Now, here on the right, we're showing an e-learning course as opposed to a video on the left. These e-learning courses have video embedded in them, but they also have that interactivity and other elements. So you can get practice questions, you can get feedback, you can get scenario-based learning, you can get a test at the end, you can have a passing score, you can pass that information to a system. So that's a distinction between a pure video, which is a passive viewing experience, and an e-learning course, which introduces a whole bunch of interactivity and makes it more of an active learning experience. And that's not, I don't think, obvious to everybody who comes to us for the first time as a potential customer. So some other things to think about when you're looking at courses are, well, what topics can I get? And how many of these courses can I get on those topics? How well do these topics or course titles apply to my company? When can I get new courses from the same company? If I go and buy a course, like for example, on commercial explosive safety, how often is that course going to be updated, and why does it get updated? If I'm going to buy a course, am I going to buy off the shelf? Am I going to buy custom? Do I want a blend of the two? And so those are some things to think about in terms of the courses. In terms of effectiveness, and I think this is our poll winner, is the course itself based on credible and sound safety information. So, look at these courses when you're demoing them. Ask yourself whether or not it's sound and accurate information. Does it match the hazards and control at your workplace? Does it follow the best practices of environmental health and safety professionals? And does it comply with the kind of regulatory requirements that you have to comply with at work? OSHA, MSHA, DOT, EPA, and so on. The flip side of this coin, and people liked this in our survey as well, is instructional design. It's got good information, great. Is that information presented in a way that makes it an effective learning experience? And this is related to what I was talking about a video versus an e-learning course. For example, does the course have learning objectives with content based on those objectives and assessment based on those objectives? Is it based on adult learning principles? We already talked about how online puts the learner in charge because they can take it on their own time. We've talked about another adult learning principle, which is interactivity. So those are things to keep in mind. One of the things that we think is especially important in terms of instructional design for online learning, which is largely a visual medium, visual and audio combined, is whether or not it has compelling visuals. You can get a lot of bang for the buck in terms of instructional effectiveness from really well-designed and compelling instructional visuals. So that's something we recommend you check out. Tests and assessments, some people notice the importance of these. So you want to know, is there a test at the end of this? But also investigate that test a little further and ask yourself some questions. What does it mean to pass? What does it mean to fail? What happens if a worker does fail? Can they take it again, or are they locked out of the course? And there's a lot of benefits to this test and assessment. Obviously, it gives you a chance to identify workers who don't get it yet, and you can teach them up so they do get it and they'll work safely. It's also a good backup for you for compliance. You have to train workers, but also determine if they understand it or not. That test will help you determine it and later prove if there's a problem to a regulator that you did in fact determine comprehension. Also, a nice thing about e-learning courses, a lot of times they have ungraded practice questions kind of embedded within the content. That's great for learners so they can see if they're getting it or not. And if they've got the question and they answered the question incorrectly, they can get feedback to kind of guide them back in a kind of non-threatening, no-stakes manner. So that can all be very helpful. I'm guessing a lot of you have a multi-language workforce and you have multi-language safety training needs. If you don't, you might be a little bit of an exception, but that certainly might change over time. And that's especially true if you work with a global organization. So you might want to see if these courses can be launched and viewed in multiple languages, which is selected by the learner. Some things to think about in addition to just, yeah, there's the issue, is there multi-language capability or not, but what exactly does that mean? How does it work? And what does it actually affect? Does it affect the audio narration and change the spoken language? If there's a transcript of the audio narration on screen, does that change as well? What about if there's a video and it has text on screen? Does that change as well? And equally importantly, or maybe more so, what about the text for the practice questions, the text for the feedback, the text for the test at the end? Does that all change as well? So don't settle for, yeah, we're multi-language capable. Find out what that means. Another thing to think about, not important if you're buying videos, important if you're buying e-learning courses, is that e-learning courses come in different types. They're referred to, it's called e-learning standards. If you think, you go back in time a little bit, you could buy a VHS or a beta tape, but it wasn't necessarily true that every video player could play both of them. Same is true with music today. You can buy a vinyl, LP, audio cassette, an 8-track, digital music. But not necessarily every player is compatible with each type. And if you buy an e-learning course, that's true with these training management systems as well. Some can play everything, others can only play certain types. So the 4 most common types, AICC is kind of the oldest. It's still around. You might run into it. The biggest, most common one is SCORM 1.2. SCORM 2004 was an attempt to update SCORM 1.2, but it just never really took off. And the newest is this thing called Tin Can, or the Experience API. And there's a lot of excitement about that, but it's not super commonly used. But make sure you know what, if you're buying an e-learning course, which of these standards it's in, and then you can make sure it's compatible with your management system. Okay, you watch a course, what happens afterwards? Can a person get a certificate if they completed an activity, or a certification if it's something like HAZWOPER or OSHA 10? And beyond that, like what's on the certificate? And how does it arrive? Does it take 2 weeks to arrive by mail, or is it automatically generated by the computer? So those are some interesting things to look into. Next, is the training course you're thinking about buying compatible on mobile devices like a smartphone and a tablet? That's increasingly common and increasingly important. So you're going to want to look at that from 2 aspects. First, technically, IT, does it play? And second, from a design aspect, was it designed so that it would be consumed on a smaller screen and still a satisfying learning experience? Usually that's going to mean shorter videos, bigger buttons, and so on. Okay, we have more related articles for you here. The one I want to call out in particular at this point is evaluating online safety training. Everything I'm saying in this webinar is said there as well, but in much more detail. Remember, you'll get this PowerPoint later. Okay, JP, I'm going to touch base again with you, see if there are any questions out there.
I think we're good right now. No questions at the moment.
All right, well, thanks everybody. I'm assuming I'm hitting all the key points, and that's great. We'll continue on. Evaluating training management systems, second component here. You're going to find there's a million different training management systems, and they do a lot of things. So to simplify it, we kind of broke this down into 4 hypothetical systems with the best names we could think of for them. And these do match reality out there, and you might see other things other than these systems. But the simplest thing is streaming or pay-per-view. This is very much like going to Netflix, watching a movie, and maybe it has a completion certificate at the end, and that's about it. That might be all your company needs. So if so, you might find some solution providers out there that are offering management systems like that. And you know, that might be a generous use of the term management system, but if that's what you need, great. The next one, safety tracker, getting into a more robust system here. You see we're using a visual analogy of car rental with increasingly powerful solutions. The safety tracker has been around for 10, 15 years, and the idea here is a really stripped down basic system. Your employees can log in, see training that's been assigned to them, complete it, and from your angle as a safety training manager, you can make some basic assignments, you can give people credit for things, and you can run a small number of reports, and that's it. Again, that's been around. There's been some measure of success in the industry with that. It is a little limiting, but maybe that's all you need. Now, these next 2 solutions or hypothetical solutions are getting more robust in terms of their training management capabilities. And there's actually an industry name for this. It's called a learning management system. So at this point, we're going to start using this term, learning management system, which is a robust training management system. So the first LMS we want to talk about are certain LMSs that have been designed specifically to be used for safety training. We'll talk about that now, and we'll get back to that idea again later. And these are really kind of helpful because as a safety trainer, they're going to have features that are kind of specific to training that maybe aren't as relevant for other kinds of training. Maybe they'll have really robust assignment features that'll help you deal with recurrent training needs. People need to be trained every year or 3 years. They might have special activity types for safety, like a checklist for walking someone through each step of a safe work procedure. They might have a tie-in with an incident investigation module. So if there's an incident at work, you can use the LMS essentially to investigate it and create your investigation report. You can determine which employees were involved, click on an employee's name, see what training they had been assigned, see what training they had completed, assign additional remediative safety training, and so on. And then the next and fourth are these big systems, these things called talent management systems. They're usually owned by big corporations, and in the HR department essentially has ownership within that corporation. And this talent management system is designed to recruit employees, hire them, onboard them, provide performance reviews, and then there's a component for all that LMS or training management stuff as well. So these are massive systems. They're very powerful. The LMS part of it itself will have a lot of features, and that could be great as well. A downside potentially is one, the LMS is intended for all kinds of companies and all kinds of uses, so it tends to be kind of general. And then secondly, it's part of this massive, larger system. It can be a little overwhelming. And third, it's usually owned, if you will, by HR, so you're kind of squatting on their system. All right, we're going to do another one of these polls, and I'm going to see what features you think might be most important in safety training management software before I give you some thoughts of my own on those. Okay, give me just a second, and I will see if I can get this poll running. I apologize. I hit the wrong button here, and my ability to start a poll has been lost. So I apologize for that. My mistake. We're going to have to move forward without a poll. Okay, talking about things that I think are important with training management systems, and maybe I apologize we couldn't take the poll. Maybe you guys can discuss those during our Q&A at the end. I attended a webinar from a company called Mimeo, and the webinar was called State of Corporate Learning. This was not that long ago. They had done a survey with a bunch of companies who are using these training management systems. And one of the things that I found most useful is they found the top complaints from companies who are currently using a training management system and why they hate their training management system and why they're looking for a new one. And so the first and most important thing that they called out was usability. You want a system that's usable, that's intuitive, that's very visually simple. And I can't stress that importantly enough. And here you want to break this down. What is the learner experience for your average employee, and what is the administrative experience? And one thing to think about is, well, I know I can do something in this system, but does it take 1 click or 2 clicks, or does it take 10 or 20 clicks? So you want to investigate that kind of stuff. Reporting, this is another key issue why people hate their training management system. Look into the system and see what kind of reporting it offers and whether or not it's useful to you. Does it integrate with other systems? You might not think about this initially, but your training management system ideally can communicate with the other systems you have at work, with HRIS, with your ERP, with your CRM, and maybe additionally with some home-coded or home-developed software programs that you have as well. And something about those home-developed software systems as well. A lot of the people who we work with have them, and they're running on old versions of web browsers. The company can't leave the old version of the web browser because they've got these software systems that are dependent on them. So when you're buying a training management system, it's great if it can work on the newest version of a web browser, but make sure it can work on older versions as well if that's relevant for you. Okay, what kind of content capabilities do you have with a training management system? Can you import your own content, including PDFs, PowerPoints, videos, web links, links on your network, links on your SharePoint? Can you create content, including online quizzes, online checklists, online surveys? And can you take existing content in your system and update it to create a new version when your training need changes a little bit so you don't have to delete an activity and import a new one? We already talked about whether or not the system allows you to manage classroom and field-based training. And you want to dig down into that deeper and see exactly what it lets you do and what it doesn't let you do. Training assignments. This is key for safety training. Are you able to select a specific part of your workforce, like for job profile or work area? Are you able to select a kind of predefined bundle of training, like new hire safety orientation? And are you able to manage all these complicated recurring due dates? Credit for completing training. This is important. What does the system do automatically? In addition to that, what does it let you do manually? Field-based training, classroom training. What about if you take an online course, project it with 20 people in a classroom? Can you give 20 people credit? And if so, can you give those 20 people credit in one bulk activity, or do you have to do something 20 times? What about card key scanning for classroom training? Does it capture digital versions of sign-in sheets and digital signatures? Is there support for field-based safety training? And what can you do on mobile devices? Security roles. You want security role for your learner, you want a security role for your safety training administrators, but in addition, those safety training administrators, you might want multiple roles. One for you so you can do everything, one for someone so that they can assign training to one group of workers but not to another, or so they can credit training for different groups of workers. Maybe the guard shack so they can just run a report but they can't assign training. New and custom features. Is this system, does it get new features over time? If so, how often, and how are those features selected? Do you have a say in that? Custom features, can you request a custom feature? Is that free or does it come with a cost? And again, we have more related information here. Going to move on to the next section here. 1 second, JP's got something for us here. Okay, he found how to get the surveys back, so we'll have a survey. Thank you to JP, I apologize for that. Now we're going to talk about evaluating online safety training providers. And JP had the timing perfectly. Polls. All right. We're going to put up another poll. Here it comes. What do you value most in an online safety training provider? We got 5 options for you here. Go ahead and take a few minutes and let us know what your thoughts are on this, what you value, what's not as important to you. Once the poll is done, as you might have guessed, I'm going to give you a few things to look for. All right, and we're rolling in. We got most of our answers now. And the big winner here is customer support, documentation, and implementation aids. 58%. 32% of you say availability and responsiveness. 6% easy to work and likable. 3%, I don't know. All right, so I'm going to close this poll down. It should transition us back to our presentation. And here we go back. All right, some tips I have for you. During the sales process, determine what the relationship was like. Were the people responsive every time you tried to reach out to them? When were they available? When weren't they? Were they easy to work with? Do you like them? Did they fly out to your company to meet you in person or maybe meet you at a trade show in your area? Did they offer to have you into their office? Previews and demos. Can you preview a course? Can you demo the system? I would definitely expect you should be able to do both. In terms of a demo, what does that actually mean? Is this a PowerPoint with some screen grabs? Is it a kind of well-rehearsed and orchestrated presentation from a salesperson? Is it where they're using the system on your behalf? If it's something like that, where the salesperson is showing you the system, is it a blank system, kind of a generic system, or something that's been set up for your to match your company's own situation? And can you get it behind the wheel and use the system yourself and really see what it's like to use? Referrals. You should be able to get informed opinion about a safety training provider. The best place is they should be able to tell you, you can contact one of our existing customers. But there are other ways to do it as well. There are third-party referral websites. We're showing you some here. Capterra is a site you can go to. They have their own ratings of products, but also users can put up their own user reviews. I already mentioned Brandon Hall. They're another good source of these. I'm going to talk more about Talented Learning. This is another good source. Safety organizations like ASSE and NSC have lists of providers. Safety publications have not just list of providers, but kind of award winners. So those are things to look for. Customer support. This was a big one. Everyone wanted customer support, and that includes a lot of things. Does the company offer training to help you with their products? Technical support, implementation aids, online knowledge base, customer portal, blog. And what does customer support mean? Are you filling in a form? Are you writing an email? Or are you calling and talking to a real person? Does a provider provide like customer service system including case number tracking, reviewing resolutions, or is it more kind of ad hoc and spontaneous? Economic and business stability. Is this company going to be around in 5 years or even 6 months? How long have they been around? What's their track record? What kind of investments are they making? And of course, pricing and pricing options. How much does it cost? When do you pay? Some options are one time up front. That's nice because it's only one time. Pay-per-view. That's nice because you're paying when you're using the system and you're not paying when you're not. And subscription-based, which might be a small upfront fee, but then smaller additional fees down the road. A benefit of that is it helps to fund ongoing product development. Okay, more related articles for you here. And we're going to get into our final section and then take questions. A few tips for beginning your search. First of all, don't do it alone if you can avoid it. We recommend you build a team and get everybody's input. That includes employees, your senior level subject matter expert employee, the man or woman who knows everything about your workplace, including more than you do. And I'd also add a brand new employee here as well. Safety and health management, we assume that's you. IT manager, productions and operation manager, quality manager, training manager, HR, and upper management and C-suite, because they tend to own these things. In particular, I want to talk about those last three, the training manager, the HR manager, and the upper manager C-suite. And the point here is they sometimes, especially at larger companies, will already have one of these large corporate talent management systems with a built-in and integrated learning management system. And so touch base with these people and see if that's true. If it's true, see if they're willing to let you use it. And if they are willing to use it, see if it's an effective tool for you. And if so, piggyback on their solution and give it a try. That might be worth your time. Now, if you check out all that and you find that they do have it, but you don't want to use it, you can still get your own system and run the two systems in parallel. If you're doing that, remember you want your own safety training LMS to be able to integrate with their LMS and pass information back and forth. And the software code that is used for those kind of integrations is called an API. So make sure you're getting a system with an API. I mentioned earlier Talented Learning. I think this is a great organization. I personally learn a lot about training management systems from them. And one of the things they're really excited about are these specialty LMSs. And these are kind of tailored, niche LMSs for specific purposes. I've already introduced the idea of a safety training LMS. That's an example of a specialty LMS. And here's a quote from their head, this guy named John Lay. Most exciting innovation is coming from this new breed of learning technology specialists. These specialists leverage their founders' unique experience and industry expertise to develop tailored solutions that address fewer problems than maybe a bigger LMS, but with a high level of efficiency and creativity. And that's going to help you find a perfect fit with an LMS designed for your specific needs, which offers undeniable business value. So that's, from an expert, and I think it's pretty good advice. There's a lot of these specialty LMSs out there. There are academic ones like Blackboard. I recommend you avoid academic ones. They're meant for universities, not for safety or manufacturing or operations. There are operation ones, there are healthcare ones, there are safety ones. So you'll start to run into these in your search. And here's my 5 parting tips for you here. 1, sit down and figure out everything you want your solution to do today. And this guy, John Lay at Talented Learning, suggests writing up use cases. I want my employees to be able to do this, that, and the other thing. As an administrator, I want to be able to do this, that, and the other thing. And then get a solution that does all that, or as close to all that as you can. In addition, point 2, get a solution you can grow into a little bit. Point 3, remember, if you get something that's too small, it can be very limiting and frustrating. You're going to be buying system 2 sooner than you want to. Point 4, beware of systems that are too big. It's nice to have something you can grow into, but if it's overwhelming, that's no good either. And you also are probably just going to straight up spend more than you need. And then 5, yes, it's true in life and it's true in safety training too, that in general you get what you pay for, but that doesn't mean you have to buy the biggest system. That doesn't mean you have to spend the most money. Find a fit that's best for your company. All right. So I went a little bit longer than I expected. I apologize for that. We do still have time for Q&A though. I want to remind you that you're going to get an email from us. It's going to have the recorded webinar. It's going to have this PowerPoint. It's going to give you a link to this blog post at Convergence Training blog that has all the links I've talked about and more. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to JP, and JP is going to help us go through questions and answers.
Yeah, we have a question from Candace, and you touched on this a little bit after she asked the question, but her question is, do safety training management systems tie into companies that currently have learning management systems in place?
Okay, I think this is someone in Kansas. That's a good question. I did address it, but I'll get into it a little further. They might, but it's not a guarantee, which is why you want to check on it. But if you have one of these existing corporate or talent management systems and you're thinking about getting another LMS, maybe the safety training LMS, to run alongside of it, ask the provider, does this have the capability through what's called an API to integrate with my existing LMS and pass information back and forth, and then you can even have further discussions with them so it's clear exactly what information you want passed. So that's a really good question. I did talk about it. I didn't talk about it maybe in as much detail, but the answer is maybe. Some systems do, some systems don't, and I highly recommend you investigate it and get a system that does.
Okay. Does anybody else out there have any questions about anything that we went over so far today? I think it's pretty quiet over here. There's a question from Karen about viewing courses on her iPad. I imagine that has something to do with file types, FLVs, and all that.
Okay, so that's kind of the hello Karen out there. So one of the things I addressed is that a lot of courses, it's important that they can be viewed on mobile devices. That's true today. It's going to be more true in the future. And I said that there's really 2 aspects of that. The first are the IT technical aspects, and the second is the design aspect. So I think Karen's question is dealing with the IT technical. And perhaps what Karen is getting at is there are multiple kinds of mobile devices, and they tend to run on different operating systems. While the Apples run on iOS, and others run on Google's Android. And you can't necessarily watch certain video files on both of those. This is beta and VHS all over again. So if you get a flash video, it's not going to play on certain mobile devices. And that's why the learning world, and this is the IT component of this answer, the learning world has moved to essentially a new standard called HTML5. And JP, I'm going to ask you to correct me because JP is a little more tech savvy than I am. But so you want these courses that have been optimized and designed through, I believe, HTML5 as an alternative to Flash, so you can watch them on any mobile device, pad, phone, tablet, no matter who made it, whether it's iOS or Android. And JP, did I trip over my language, or did I get all the terminology correct there?
No, that's more or less correct. It gets fairly technical and probably don't have the time to really go into it, but I think that's more or less correct.
Yeah, I think that it does get fairly technical, and it's over my head. Ask the provider, will this play on all devices? And if the answer is yes, you're good.
Okay, got a couple other questions here. Let's see, what has been your experience delivering e-learning to production on the shop floor?
Well, that's a good question. Often left field, but I'm glad that you dragged me out to left field. We're talking about safety training, but clearly a lot of safety occurs within the context of operations and production. And we do have a lot of customers in operation and production. We deliver a lot of training for production facilities and manufacturing facilities. And it's a question, JP, if I understand it correctly, does it have to do with a mobile training delivery on the floor? Is that the point?
Maybe that's what she's getting at, Jill here, but yeah, she says yes.
Okay. Thanks, Jill. So, that's changed over time. And if we had this discussion 5 years ago, I would tell you just about people sitting in a training room taking training on a desktop computer. But so some of the things that we're seeing, I know that we had actually a winery who installed mobile tablets in a kiosk scenario out in the production floor area so that people could access training in the workplace. People are now starting to do this on mobile devices as well, like smaller things, not at a kiosk, but a tablet or a phone out in the field. So we are actively working with customers doing that. And that's true of a lot of training providers, not just us. We'd like obviously to have some cooperation between operation and safety, since they're two sides of the coin anyway. We and other training providers are optimizing courses for delivery on mobile devices out in the field. We think it's a great idea for a couple of reasons. First of all, people will retain training better and use it later when they need it if they consume it in the same environment in the workplace. And that's proven with studies over and over again. The other thing about that I mentioned earlier is that it's great to have a classroom training, but that is usually in a classroom. It's at a certain time, it ends, and that information can't be easily retrieved unless the magic of learning happened. But mobile devices mean you can rely less on training and memory and more on information access and work support. So you can have these mobile devices out in the field. And we have we do a lot of work in paper manufacturing, for example, and our customers will have a tablet mounted right at machine X or machine Y, and the employee can pull up any information they want, a standard operating procedure, an explanation of how to thread something into a machine, or so on. So to an aspect, you're moving away from training, and you're moving toward performance-based work support. So we're big fans of it, and we have our customers who are using it well. And again, this all gets down into optimizing delivery for mobile devices. Hopefully that answered the question well, and if not, feel free to email me for more.
All right, we're just about out of time. I think we got one more question from Bill. Do you know anything about validation of participation required by OSHA?
Validation of participation required by OSHA. I'm not 100% sure what this means, but I think what it's. And Bill, I apologize. And again, feel free, if I don't get this right, chat and tell JP I got it wrong, or shoot me an email. But I think you're saying, did the employee confirm that he or she participated in training? I apologize. I'm not quite certain when OSHA requires that, if they ever do. I know that you're required to keep a record, so that's a gap in my knowledge, and I apologize. In terms of whether or not you'd want to do it, which I do have knowledge of, I think there are many cases in which you would want it, and a lot of training management systems will provide different capabilities for that, either a check, like distribute written material and then ask someone to confirm by checking a box that they've read and understood it. Capabilities to have instructor-led classroom training, for example. Pass them along a sign-in sheet like a lot of people currently do, but then scan that and put it into the system along with your completion records, and even using mobile devices to gather digital signatures to confirm that people were present and that they had training. And the same with performing like a demonstrated skill or a safe work practice checklist out in the field. You can have both the supervisor and the supervisor and learner check each step and then gather each person's signature at the bottom for the entire list. So I think it was Bill. And Bill, I hope I got your question right. If not, let us know either in the chat feature now or by shooting us off an email. You see our emails on the screen here, and I'm more than happy to field questions later as well. And I apologize, I don't actually know when OSHA requires anything like that per se.
He says you got it right, thanks.
Fantastic, fantastic.
Okay, if there aren't any other questions, we're just on the other side of 11 o'clock, so we'll wrap it up. Thank you all for joining us today, and be on the lookout for the follow-up email that has the recording of this and all the other goodies. So thanks, have a great day.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Have a good one.